I used to be a devout member of the Rhesus denomination, but recently I've converted to the Church of Butterfinger. Domino. Greetings, one and all, and welcome back to Tom's Hit Parade. By the way, I invite you to hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up if you like what you see, share this video with your friends, and leave me your thoughts down in the comment section. That would be groovy. So today is the second episode of my revamped, retooled, and relaunched Backtracks series, in which I talk about my favorite albums from decades past. And since this is the 2025 cycle of Backtracks, we are talking about albums that were put out in years ending with the number 5. Last month I talked about 1955. This month we are moving on to 1965. I will show you my 10 favorite albums from the decade and a few honorable mentions as well. Now, 1965 was a big year. The Beatles put out 2 albums. Bob Dylan put out 2 albums. The Byrds put out a couple of albums, 2 albums. The Rolling Stones, I think, put out 2 albums, but spoiler alert, you're not going to see them in this countdown. And that brings me to another point which I made in last month's video. These lists of mine for Backtracks are going to be a little weird because I am in a perpetual state of discovering for the first time albums from those decades, the 50s, the 60s, and most of the 70s, that I had never listened to until now. It's just, for some reason, it took me forever to get into music from the years before I was born, and basically from the years before I started really listening to music at all. So I don't know why it's taken me that long. Just in the few months that I have started this series, I've discovered there's a lot of great music out there, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not discovering it sooner. And so rolling up my sleeves. It's a little bit warm in here. But anyway, so yeah, this is going to be a great series, and maybe if I restart Backtracks 10 years from now with the 5 years, again, I will see fit to revamp my list and include some stuff that I discover between now and then. So you never know. I'm always up for continuing to discover music. It's been a great journey so far, and I hope to continue with it. So anyway, yes, I'm going to show you my 10 favorite albums along with a few honorable mentions. Now, unofficially, the second albums by the Byrds, the Beatles, and Dylan that are not in my top 10 are unofficially in my honorable mentions as well, because I listened to both of each artist's albums, loved them both, but I've decided to impose a rule on myself, just one album by each artist for these top 10 countdowns, and also for the honorable mentions as well, just because I don't want to, make them lopsided, Anyway, the 3 official honorable mentions that I have. First off, we have the Supremes. The Supremes, we remember Sam Cooke. Now, I love Sam Cooke. He is one of my favorite soul singers from the 60s, and I love Motown as well, so I figure I couldn't go wrong with this album. It's from 1965, obviously. And the only reason it's an honorable mention is I was a little bit disappointed in the arrangements, maybe just because I was expecting so much from this album, considering how much I love Sam Cooke and the Supremes. But they did justice to these songs. You Send Me, Cupid is a big hit of his. The Chain Gang, Bring It On Home to Me, that was one of his really soulful hits. Wonderful World. A Change Is Gonna Come, that was the great social commentary song that Sam Cooke came up with. So yes, a fantastic album, gotta say. Just not quite in my top 10, but still, it is, you can't go wrong. I would recommend, if you love Sam Cooke, if you love the Supremes, check out this album. You might, the arrangements are a little more Supremes-like than, kind of like all of their other stuff. So, it's like it doesn't stand out in terms of the rest of this Supremes discography, just in terms of the sonic palette is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Anyway, moving on to my second honorable mention, we have the folk album by Trini Lopez. I discovered Trini Lopez 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing what I called an A to Z, Tom's A to Z, in which I got 26 albums from the House of Records $1 section, and each one by an artist beginning with a different letter of the alphabet. And I got one of Trini Lopez's albums at that point. This I don't think this was the one that I got, but I really liked that album. I loved it enough that I've picked up 3 or 4 other Trini Lopez albums since then. And yes, this is, as you can probably imagine, he tackles some classic folk songs such as Lemon Tree, Greenback Dollar, Puff the Magic Dragon, the Peter, Paul, and Mary song, We'll Sing in the Sunshine, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, the Bob Dylan song. Obviously, there was going to be some Dylan in here. But yes, a very, very good album. And yeah, there's just something about Trini Lopez that I really, really enjoy and have been enjoying for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years now. So yeah, another great honorable mention. Now, the third honorable mention is going to probably make a lot of you scratch your heads and question my status as a music fan. But yeah, A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. I really liked it. It's just outside my top 10. It's taken me a lot. It's really hard for me to get into the improvish and freeform kind of jazz, and that's the only reason why I'm just not more of a fan of this album. It is excellent. The musicianship is stratospheric, and it really uh, is no shock that John Coltrane became the jazz giant that he is with this album, and no reason or no surprise why this album is so big in the annals of jazz music. But maybe in years to come, I will, as I absorb it more, I will get more into it. And if I revamp this list 10 years from now, as I said, it may be in the top 10. But for now, it is just outside the top 10. Very, very good album, gotta say. And now on to the top 10 proper. Now, especially considering the one you just saw in my honorable mentions, the fact that this one is in my top 10 is probably really going to make you guys wonder about me. Whipped Cream and Other Delights by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. What can I say? This album is just fun. I just love the fun spirit of this album. I guess I'm kind of repeating myself, but yeah, it is. The album is obviously everywhere. You see it in all the record stores, thrift stores. You will probably see it in just about every yard sale you go to. But that just means that a lot of people bought this album back in the day. And considering, take one listen to it and you'll see why. It's just super fun. He does, obviously, the track listing, as you can see, is all food related song titles. A Taste of Honey was one of Herb Alpert's biggest singles. What else we have? Lemon Tree, which is on Trini Lopez. The Lemon Tree on here is an instrumental version. Love Potion Number 9. That was a song. Was it the Zombies that did that? I can't remember. It probably wasn't. But that was a big hit, and again, a big hit in its lyrical version. But yes, Lollipops and Roses, the title track, Whipped Cream, Bittersweet Samba, Tangerine, Green Peppers. And it's no wonder with this album that Herb Alpert continued to make albums with Tijuana Brass, and he continues to record albums today. He is still putting out albums. No, this album did not change the landscape of music, but its appeal is undeniable. The only reason it's not higher on this list is because you listen to the entire album in one sitting, the songs start to sound a little samey. That is not to disparage the talent and the musicianship of Herb Alpert and his band. Still excellent, excellent stuff. But yes, that is my number 10, Whipped Cream and Other Delights by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. My number 9 is Do You Believe in Magic by the Lovin' Spoonful. Great American folk pop, folk rock, whatever we might call it. The title track is a huge hit. Did You Ever Have to Make Up Your Mind? Another great song. Fish and Blues was an interesting one. On the Road Again. The Other Side of This Life, just a bunch of really good, great songs. I've picked up their sophomore album as well, and this is actually a remastered version with bonus tracks. Some good stuff in here, and the Lovin' Spoonful went on to have a great career. It's just not higher on this list just because, well, so much stiff competition in this year's listening. It was just just didn't quite beat out the rest of my contenders. But yes, that is number 9. Do You Believe in Magic by the Lovin' Spoonful. My number 8 favorite album is Orange Blossom Special by Johnny Cash. Yes, Johnny Cash is one of those country artists that pretty much everybody should have at least something of his in their collection. And this album is just, it's one of his best, and it is an absolute classic, as you can see from this remastered edition. So many great story songs on this album. And he also covers, this being 1965, Bob Dylan kind of saturated the airwaves and was a huge sensation in this year. So probably half the albums on my list have Bob Dylan covers on them, and this one is no exception. Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. And I thought there was one other one. Oh, It Ain't Me, Babe. That's another great one. Those, at least It Ain't Me, Babe. I'm not sure that it translated well to Johnny Cash, a Johnny Cash rendition, which is kind of unusual because Dylan's songs are so ubiquitous. Is not the right word, but just so transcendent. That's the word, that they can pretty much translate into any genre. Just not sure about. I think it might have been the arrangement of Johnny Cash's version, but it's great. You Wild Colorado. It's that one's kind of an ode to the Colorado River. All of God's Children Ain't Free. That's a great song. Danny Boy, the classic folk song from Ireland. Amen, the classic spiritual, closes out the original version of this album. The Long Black Veil, the title track. When It's Springtime in Alaska, it's 40 Below. So, yes, an excellent album. As I said, lots of great story songs. Johnny Cash is a great musical storyteller. You can't go wrong checking out the album Orange Blossom Special by Johnny Cash, my number 8 favorite album of 1965. My number 7, and again, it's only this low because there was so much great competition. Mr. Tambourine Man, My the Birds. Yes, the title track, of course, and this one has like 4 Dylan covers on it. Mr. Tambourine Man. Yes, I can speak. Let's see. Chimes of Freedom, I believe, was another one of the Dylan covers. And yes, this one thing about this album is they don't just choose the predictable big hit Dylan songs. They choose a couple of the slightly lesser known ones. But All I Really Want to Do is a great song. Don't Doubt Yourself, Babe. Here Without You, You Don't Have to Cry. Spanish Harlem Incident. I believe that was a Dylan cover also. So yes, the Byrds started out on a strong note with their album Mr. Tambourine Man. And I really, for a while, I kind of debated whether this one or Turn, Turn, Turn was going to be on this list. And Mr. Tambourine Man just edged out their sophomore album. But they are obviously both fantastic albums. My number 6 is Downtown by Petula Clark. I've loved Petula Clark for many years. I'm not sure why I fell in love with her music so much, but yes, just a great, great pop singer from the 60s. She, as of a couple of years ago, she was still recording albums, so she is just still going strong. And but her more recent stuff has never quite lived up to this stuff. This was her debut album, by the way. Has the title track, which is a major hit of hers, probably her biggest hit. And we have Crying Through a Sleepless Night, and then a song called Music, and then Be Good to Me, True Love Never Runs Smooth. And yes, a lot of great, great songs. And she puts in a couple of different song stylings, musical palettes, if you will, in this album. It's just kind of a fun listen, a little more unpredictable than your average pop album from 1965. So, yes, excellent, excellent album by Petula Clark. One of the great, great singers, one of my favorite singers from the 1960s. Now, number 5. And again, this one is only at number 5. Well, it's in the top 5. I mean, hey, there's that. But just because the competition, as I said, was pretty heavy for 1965. But My Generation by The Who, their debut album, the title track, of course. And then we have The Kids Are All Right. And I'm a Man, their cover of the Howlin' Wolf song. I probably got that wrong too. A Legal Matter, and I Don't Mind, and The Good's Gone. So yes, a lot of great songs on this album. And again, another band that started out on a fairly strong note, pun intended, with My Generation. The debut album by The Who is my number 5 favorite album of 1965. Coming up on number 4. Now, this one might not be, if I wasn't in my mid 50s now, this album probably would not have been as high as it is. It's taken on a special kind of a meaning to me in recent years since I discovered it a couple of years ago. It is September of My Years by Frank Sinatra. It is my number 4 album of 65. Sinatra was in his 50s when he recorded this album, and it may, correct me if I'm wrong, but it may be the first time that an artist who was, past the absolute peak of his career, uh, kind of took the subjects of aging and moving past your prime and put them front and center in his music. Just kind of put his heart on his sleeve, if you will, and just talked about the fact that he's getting older. And I can kind of relate to the songs, maybe not so much in the terms of the lovers he's had and regretting decisions based on his love life and that kind of thing. Not so much, but just the general aging questions and stuff. How Old Am I is one song. It's one of the names of the song. And I just love some of the song titles in here, just as poetic as the song lyrics. Last Night When We Were Young is the name of one of the songs. The Man in the Looking Glass is probably my favorite song on the album. I look in the mirror and I see, gray here and I see gray here, and I don't feel old enough to be a person with gray hair. That's just kind of, so that's how I kind of relate to that song. When the Wind Was Green was an interesting song. And of course, it has his huge hit, It Was a Very Good Year. That's just the songwriting on this album is just as excellent as Sinatra's voice. I mean, in a lot of respects, they just don't write songs like this anymore, really. The title track is fantastic. Don't Wait Too Long. And It Gets Lonely Early is another excellent standout song. But yes, September of My Years is very deservedly is number 4 in my personal favorite albums of 1965. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty here. Number 3 on my list is Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan. There's, you don't really need an explanation as to why this is in my top 3. Should it have been number 1? Maybe. But Subterranean Homesick Blues, Maggie's Farm, Outlaw Blues, Mr. Tambourine Man. There we go. It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. And that's just for starters. I mean, the entire track list is just fantastic. This was his 3rd album, I believe, 3rd or 4th album. But yeah, an absolute stone cold classic, and for very, very good reason. For all the songs I just mentioned and the whole rest of the track listing. But yes, Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan, my number 3 favorite album of 1965. According to my mood, it could change. I mean, as is the deal with any list that I put out, depending on my mood, that album is my favorite from that year. Number 2 is going to be an interesting selection. Very few of you will probably even have predicted that this was on my list at all. Odetta Sings Dylan. This is an absolutely fantastic album. It is my number 2 for good reason. For some reason, I just had a feeling this was going to be a good album. Partly because, it's all Bob Dylan songs, obviously. But when I put it on and listened to it, I heard these. It was like I'd never heard these songs before. That is what Odetta did to these songs. She makes these versions of these songs her own. And that is a very difficult thing for an artist to do with such well-known songs. But yes, trust me, if you have not heard Odetta Sings Dylan, you've got to. It is an outstanding album. So yeah, and you can see the track listing there. But yeah, just nearly every song on this album is just. I had to be reminded most of the time that these were songs that Dylan wrote and performed before. But yeah, I'm kind of speechless with this album. At least I think I was able to articulate. I hope I was able to articulate what this album did to me and why it is number 2 on my list. But yes, check out Odetta Sings Dylan if you have not yet. Absolutely fantastic, outstanding album, and absolutely my number 2 for 1965. My number 1 album, the artist is probably not going to surprise you. And it's pretty much a deserved spot. And again, their other album, it was kind of a touch and go with this one and their other album being number 1. But my number 1 is Rubber Soul by the Beatles. And all you have to do is look at the track listing again. Drive My Car, which has always been kind of a sentimental favorite of mine. Norwegian Wood, This Bird Has Flown. You Won't See Me, Nowhere Man, and those are just the first 4 songs. And it goes on from there. It maintains its excellence from there. Michelle, obviously, I'm Looking Through You in My Life is a fantastic song. But yeah, kind of as was par for the course with the Beatles, lots of hits, not necessarily chart hits, but hits in terms of great songs, and very few, if any, misses. But yes, excuse me, Rubber Soul by the Beatles stands proud as my number 1 album of 1965. And I can't, not to mention the other albums that I didn't talk about in this video. Tony Bennett put out an album in 1965, and I thought it was really good. It just barely missed the honorable mentions, and just so many more. And as I said, hopefully 10 years from now, I will discover even more albums, and this list, maybe I'll bump this list out to 20 items and give you even more great stuff to ooh and ah over. But anyway, that'll do it for this video. Be sure to like it if you liked it. And before you go, drop me some feedback in the comment section. I'd love to know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon to catch my future videos, and hit my username to browse my old videos. Links to my socials and my favorite fellow YouTubers are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. And remember, life's too short to be a music snob.